This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when and where you may be listening with us. We are Fourth and Frames. Appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. We're here to talk about Week 9. We're gonna cover our smash your pass picks or our plays and fades for the week. And then if you're joining us live on YouTube tonight, we're going to be answering your questions as well. Normally, we would have Rhett doing this, but he has some well-deserved family time on the table, which I am slightly disappointed. Number one, because I have to do these intros that I don't normally do. Number two, because the Rams play the Saints coming out of the Rams bye this week, and they get to welcome Tyler Sucks Ass to the NFL. And so I was really hoping to have some fun with him about that, but I'll just have to have fun afterwards, I guess. And there's no way that intro is going to come back to bite me in the ass at all. If you're watching with us on YouTube and want to support our content, the best thing you can do is like this video, number one, here while you're here with us on YouTube. Subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel, and then from there, you're pretty much set up. You can also search for all the podcasts here at Fantasy and Frames by name on your preferred podcast platform. So for us, if you could search up the Fourth and Frames podcast and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, whatever you may listen to podcasts on, we would greatly appreciate that. And then last but certainly not least, make sure to go check out fantasyandframes.com. We've got weekly rankings for both the offensive side of the ball and IDP. As well as our staff dynasty rankings and all of the latest articles. We got waiver articles every week for IDP and redraft. We have plays and fades every week for redraft and for IDP. So make sure that you check out the website as well. Kyle, how you doing tonight, my man?
Good. Very good, man. Busy today, man. My God, I've been just nonstop on the go working on the Week 9 article, plays and fades. Jorge, if you're listening, I'm done. I shared it with you. It was crazy busy, man. And then I got right to the show sheet to check it out. And of course, I was late to the show sheet. You guys picked some good picks. We'll hear about that tonight. I'll tell you though, man, when I was looking at it after you guys chose your players, I was a little struggle bus trying to figure out what I wanted to do. There was some tough picks in there. I don't know if you caught that or not, but yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah.
I did catch that. I'm gonna be really interested to see how those how those play out tonight. And as you can see, anytime I host, I try to make sure that I have some burner accounts ready on the go to keep my spirits up. And so I went ahead and dropped a comment in with one of my burner accounts in the comments here to get us kick-started. Now, Philip, appreciate you joining us tonight, man. I could not agree more. The Rams absolutely roll. Nate, I'm sure you agree with that statement, but outside of that, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I won't necessarily disagree with it. I don't feel vehemently against Stan Kroenke doesn't rule. Some of the players on the Rams I am fans of, but as a whole, obviously, my content. It's incredible because some people followed him to LA and ride or die. Others, spit on Stan Kroenke and company and says never again. But all in all,
it's fair.
I'm doing great. It's we got a decent Thursday night game. I think I'm optimistic leading into another weekend that is full of, as Kyle alluded to, just some crazy gross flex options that we're gonna have to play. But that's the key to the show, and the key to following all the content at Fantasy and Frames is if you can get that little competitive edge. It's amazing how an extra 3-4 points in a flex spot can swing the. These weeks are where a lot of people are 4-4. A lot of people are 3-5 and have to have those wins. And hopefully, we're gonna help get that W for you tonight.
And even if you're 2-6, you're not out of it. Just keep plugging away. You're not out of it.
You're absolutely not. You're absolutely unless you're viewing life through Nate's lens, and then
Right, exactly. Just quit. No, never quit.
All right. So we're going to kick things off as we always do with our smash plays for week 9. If you guys have any start sit decisions that you're struggling with, any trade questions, anything like that, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. And we will get to those in between segments as we can as well. But we're going to kick things off with our week 9 smash plays. So a smash player, we try to stay away from the obvious guys, right? Nobody needs to come on here and tell you to start Bijan Robinson. But so for us, whenever we're looking for smash plays, we're looking at the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings for week 9, and we're looking at players outside of the top 12 quarterbacks, outside of the top 15 running backs, outside of the top 20 receivers, and outside of the top 10 tight ends that we think will outperform their ranking for the week based on where they are in the ECR. So with that being said, we'll kick things off with our smash plays. Nate, I'm going to be honest with you. I almost went here to the point where I had him in the show sheet before I ended up replacing him with somebody else. So it's easy for me to say that I agree. But who is smash play number 1 for you this week?
Yeah, I love how we have the ECR consensus rankings where had it been Nate's rankings, I couldn't use this player because I have him inside my top 15 this week, and that's unfortunate. Ooh. No, I'm kidding. He's not. It's I would love to go that far and say that's who it is, but it is Kareem Hunt, and he actually is right around that spot, and partially because obviously the Isaiah Pacheco MCL injury. Pacheco didn't practice today. Kareem Hunt should carry the lion's share of the work this week. I know a lot of the reports we're going to see Brashard Smith's name probably more than anybody else, but realistically, the high quality touches should belong to Kareem Hunt. Andy Reid trusts him. He gets every third down, important touch, if you will, whenever they need to. And Buffalo, if you look at running back defense wise, they've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the position, 2nd most rushing touchdowns allowed. Boom, Kareem Hunt, goal line monster. The 4th highest explosive run rate. So really what I'm looking at is whenever I have a person a la Kareem Hunt who, if he's in between the 20s and goal line and Brashard Smith is going to come in for the passing work and as a filler, I want the explosive run. And I think that's what's really going to catapult Kareem Hunt into that upper end RB2 category this week, is that compounded with Buffalo's 5.5 yards per carry allowed, the 3rd highest missed tackle rate. Biggest news possible outside of all that is Trey Smith practiced today. So now you have another piece to that offensive line. Jawan Taylor's played really good. Josh Simmons isn't returning anytime soon. That offensive line, when they're healthy, they run behind that. And while I do think it's going to be obviously a close game, and Buffalo's not going to not score. If that's the case, Kareem Hunt still has the ability to stay in even on passing downs. I don't think it's necessarily to the extent of what Brashard Smith could be, but I'm confident that Kareem Hunt's going to deliver not only better than RB. Pardon me, I didn't have it at 30 to 25. I'll put him into that higher end RB2 range. So
yeah,
it's my take. I don't know if you guys, obviously, Drew, you said you were going to do it. Kyle, you may agree, you may disagree, but let me know what you think, and then tell me who your smash play is. We're on a running back theme, just a little Easter egg for all the listeners.
Yeah, Nate, it's kind of funny how we were all thinking alike here. When I looked at the show sheet, I immediately thought to put Kareem Hunt as a smash. And then, of course, I saw the homer in Nate. He already signed up for that one. But I actually had a question for you, Nate. You mentioned Brashard Smith. And with Pacheco being out, like you mentioned, he usually gets a 56.8% run snap share here I'm looking at. Right. How much snap share, should I say, would Brashard Smith, do you think, will increase? Will he take on the old Kareem Hunt role, which is about 34%, or do you think it'll be more like 75-25?
So that's the hard thing, is with the running back share, Kareem Hunt, despite whose carries it were, if it's Isaiah Pacheco's series and he's running well, even if he's running well on a lot of the third and shorts, they still went the Kareem Hunt way. So it's hard to say it's going to fill an exact 1-for-1 because Andy Reid's trust in Kareem Hunt's skill set varies from what is trust in Brashard Smith. While I do think that we'll see an increase in Brashard Smith, don't be shocked at all. Remember, I talked about that explosive run rate with Buffalo and the 5.5 yards per attempt. That translates probably better for a high output Brashard Smith game on the potential, but I'm not going for shooting the moon upside. I'm looking for a solid flex fill in, unless you're really, really desperate. And I'll pivot and say Brashard Smith, if you have him on your roster and you're really in a desperate spot, it would be fine. I just don't expect him to outproduce Kareem Hunt. So probably an increase from what he's done, of course. Probably not to the level of what Kareem Hunt's is, but it'll definitely see an uptick.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Drew, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I completely agree with Nate that I think that I think Kareem Hunt is a great call this week. You know, the Bills have been the sixth best matchup based on schedule adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. They had good showing against the Carolina Panthers run offense last week, but outside of that, they have been exploited rather frequently. So, you know, I was right on board thinking about that. I am very interested to see what happens with Brashard Smith, because he was supposedly get an increase in work this past week, and then he ended up playing a whopping 13% of snaps. And so, you know, they kind of forced Andy Reid's hand at this point, to where it's, if you don't play him now, then clearly there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. But yeah, no, I agree. I think Kareem Hunt is a great play this week. And as Nate said, we're on kind of a running back kick for this first smash play. So which running back do you have for your first smash this week, Kyle?
Yeah, my first one is Zach Charbonnet, ECR running back 28. To me, it's a smash play here against Jorge's Commanders. So Jorge, if you're listening, just fire up the Star Wars theme song right now. You're not going to like what you got to hear. I'll give you a second to do that. No, I'm kidding. But we have seen Washington just get burned by running backs just in the last 3 games alone. You know, Pacheco and Hunt, we just talked about, they combined for 98 yards, where Hunt did find the end zone there. Javonte Williams had a $116 on the ground against him. DeAndre Swift, 108 on the ground against the Commanders. And look, I came into this season, guys, as a Kenneth Walker truther, but it's time to shift gears. You got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to accept the fact that Charbonnet is here. Whether we think he sucks at running or not, he is here to stay, because right now in week 9, Charbonnet holds a 54.1% share of the snaps. He's ahead in the passing down work as well. He's run 73 routes to Walker's 59. Now, I will say this. Walker has gotten a little bit more involved from the 20-yard line and in. But when they get to that goal line, say 5 yards in, it's all Zach Charbonnet. It's like 75% share him from the 5-yard line. He's getting the opportunities from there. And, yeah, it's not even close. I mean, not saying that Walker won't score in this game, but I just like Zach Charbonnet a little bit more, because the chances of finding the end zone is a little bit greater. So give me some of Charbonnet against Washington this week.
You know, there's one to add a little positive to that too, and Zach Charbonnet is a great call, is the Commanders lost Johnny Jerzon Newton last week, or at least potentially. He didn't practice today, and that's a big body up the middle. And if you're looking for just added ammunition for why you can support that pick, that's the one thing that stands out to me across the defensive line. So yeah, it's a good call.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Brandon, appreciate you joining us. He said Christian Kirk, ? Christian Kirk at least looks like he might be playing this week. So that, you know, limited participant in practice. So that's a good sign. I would not want to play him this week against Denver. I know that much. But once the Texans get past Denver this week, they have a run of 4 straight matchups: Jacksonville, Tennessee, Buffalo, Indy, all plus matchups for fantasy receivers. So if Kirk can get healthy, stay healthy, and the Texans offensive line can continue to give Stroud the type of time to throw like they did this past week, then maybe there'll be something there with Kirk over the next, you know, month stretch after this week. The only thing is they have to turn around and play Kansas City after that 4-week stretch. So we'll have to probably come back to earth there in week 14. And then they got the Chargers championship week. So that's a tough matchup for fantasy receivers as well. But nice little month-long stretch of good matchups there for Texans receivers. So maybe Christian Kirk makes some noise after this week. And then Albert, as always, man, we appreciate you hanging out with us Thank you for joining us tonight, as always. All right, so I'm going to keep the running back train rolling. And for me, the guy that I ended up landing on, it was really struggled between Kareem Hunt and this guy, and I ended up landing on Arizona Cardinals running back Bam Knight, who is the ECR running back 22 this week. Look, headed into the bye week, it was starting to look like Bam Knight was taking the lead role away from Michael Carter anyway. He had 118 total yards, a touchdown on 29 touches between week 6 and 7. And then the Cardinals turned around and cut Michael Carter. they did bring him back on the practice squad, but they were willing to let him go. And that meant with that scenario that the only two healthy running backs on the Cardinals roster was Bam Knight and Amari DiMarcardo, who the coaching staff basically left for dead after the whole dropping the ball before you score fiasco that he had a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he missed last week with an ankle injury. He might not play this week. It looks like Michael Carter might go from being cut to getting called up from the practice squad to be the running back 2 this week. But Arizona told us what we needed to know in terms of who they think the lead guy is in this backfield based on, the roster moves that they were willing to make. And now this week, Bam Knight and the Cardinals, they get a matchup against the Dallas Cowboys defense that's been the second best matchup for fantasy running backs whenever you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. And they're also allowing the 7th highest rushing yards per game and the 3rd highest receiving yards per game to the running back position on the season as well. And this is not breaking news. You want to start your fantasy players against the Dallas Cowboys. This week is no different. And look, to be honest, I don't think that Bam Knight is even that great of a player. But Trey Benson has at least 1 week left on IR, and it doesn't seem like the coaching staff has any faith in Michael Carter or DiMarcardo. So you've got Bam Knight with the coaching staff telling us that he should be the guy in a matchup that is very exploitable. And so at ECR running back 22, I think that's a little bit low. I've got him a few spots higher than that. I think he's a smash play this week.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Drew, but that whole cutting of Michael Carter actually kind of surprised me because he actually played well. He played well, and then a week later they cut him. I was just very surprised by that.
I didn't think Bam Knight had looked any better or had just ripped the job away or anything like that. I mean, he was getting the snaps. So if we're just going to follow the tea leaves, it looked like he was going to be the guy because that's who the coaching staff was preferring. But I didn't see anything that was like, they have to go this direction. It makes complete sense. I thought it was very, very strange as well. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, Osiris, appreciate you joining us tonight. Do I start Juwan Johnson or Mark Andrews this week? Just want 8 to 10 points. Okay. Kyle, I'll start with you, and then Nate, you could follow up. Who would you guys prefer between Juwan Johnson and Mark Andrews? With Osiris just wanting it sounds like a safe play this week.
I think I would go Mark Andrews actually against the Miami Dolphins. He's looking for a for a good game. He's got Lamar Jackson back. I think he's going to play. I think he's ready to go.
Yeah,
I like Mark Andrews here against Miami, who we've seen give up a lot of yards. And if you want that safer play, then I think it is Mark Andrews, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part. Is I want to say the exact same thing because it sure feels like the Lamar Jackson added piece to that offense makes it safer. I also just know Juwan Johnson is just such a target monster that it seems safe. Now, if it was half point, I probably lean Mark Andrews. In full point, I think I might lean Juwan Johnson. And maybe that's a little bit of my bias towards trust in Juwan Johnson. But boy, I just don't know. At the end of the day, I guess realistically, the safest play is to rely on the quarterback. And I trust Lamar Jackson a lot more than Tyler Shuck. And there's no doubt about it. That's the only thing that I'm hesitant towards is most of Juwan Johnson's production has been with Spencer Rattler. This past week was a blend, but I'm going to take it safe, and we're going to give Osiris at least a consensus between the two of us, and we'll go with Mark Andrews.
Well,
and that would be three of us as well.
Okay.
I also would go Mark Andrews. Like you mentioned, he has the better quarterback, clearly, by far. He also has the better matchup. The Rams have been one of the top 12 toughest options against the tight end on the season, whereas the Dolphins have been more middle of the pack. And so he's got the better matchup. We saw Pitts get a lot of love this past week against Miami, and I think he's still a clear top two option in that Ravens passing offense between him and Zay Flowers. Whereas with Juwan Johnson, even though he does tend to get targeted pretty well, he still is competing with both Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, who both of those guys had target shares over 20% after Shuck came in the game as well. So I think that there's a little bit more target competition there. The targets aren't as good of a quality, and the matchup is tougher for Juwan Johnson. So I would lean Andrews as well. But Osiris, you're not wrong. There is some connections there between rookie quarterbacks and checking down to the tight ends. It's so funny whenever we're talking about the Saints, we're talking about this rookie quarterback coming in and taking over, and he's older than the guy he's replacing. That never fails to make me laugh. But yeah, so we've got a consensus of Mark Andrews over Juwan Johnson on that one, but I do.
I could add something real quick, Drew, just to throw it in there.
absolutely.
I forgot that I did this in my plays and fades. If it makes you feel any better for the safer call, the Dolphins, allow the 11th most fantasy points to the tight ends, and 4 tight ends actually have top 50 yards against them in the last 6 games. Dalton Kincaid, Mason Taylor, Aronde Gatson, and Kyle Pitts all had at least 50 yards against them. Should get you that 6 to 8 points that you're looking for.
Yep, there you go. So
Or 8 to 10, sorry.
Consensus pick there, Osiris. We are siding with Mark Andrews, and hopefully Lamar Jackson being back brings good things. All right, Prime. Hey guys, traded Derrick Henry, Tyler Warren, Ibuka, and Swift for Bijan, JSN, Debo, and Kenneth Walker, making my team Jaden Daniels, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, JSN, London, Kittle, K9, and Debo. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, good job.
Bench Flacco, Hampton, Dobbins, Travis Hunter, and Garrett Wilson. So he also, on top of having Egbuka, on top of having Jason in London, he also has Garrett Wilson, which hopefully he'll be healthy coming out of his bye next week. And Travis Hunter, who, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about in a little while. Man, this is a great team. Great team. And it's having both Warren and Kittle and being able to use one of those guys as a trade chip to level up at another position is such a great strategy. And the fact that you have Gibbs and Bijan on the same team, and JSN, who is those are like, I don't know if we did a redraft right now of redraft leagues. But those are probably like 3 of the top 5 or top 6 picks at worst. I mean, that's great work, man.
That's league winning right there.
Team looks great. Yep, you are definitely set up to make some noise for sure. My new favorite Rams fan, Mason, JCM, or Emmanuel Lewis Wilson. So I don't think you're playing Emmanuel in any way with Jacobs.
No.
So we're looking at Jordan Mason or JCM here. Do either of you guys have a strong preference between Jordan Mason and JCM, both of which have kind of been disappointing fantasy owners here recently? So I can see why this would be tough, because it's like, which one is going to hurt me the least? But do you guys have a strong feeling one way or the other?
I guess if I'm going by my rankings, I have I have Bill ahead of Jordan Mason. Not by much, by like 1 or 2 spots. I think Aaron Jones's involvement, and they're playing against the Lions, just makes me want to avoid all Minnesota backfield. Not that Seattle's some cakewalk, but at the end of the day, I think getting Jaden Daniels back, not having Terry McLaurin, the offense is then consolidated a little bit more, and hopefully that means it runs a little bit through JCM or Bill or whatever we want to call them. So yeah, I think it would go in that order: Bill, Mason, and then Eugene.
Oh, Eugene. Yeah, I would agree. I have Bill Krosky Merritt in like the low 20s, and then I've got Jordan Mason outside of my top 30 running backs for the week. So I would go JCM as well, but I can't tell you I'm too excited about it. But I think it's like the the better of the two tough options to pick from. Um,
And the reason it says I called
love
him
you.
Eugene Wilson for a good probably 15 minutes straight one time, and without even paying any attention.
Oh
Finally,
yeah,
I was corrected, and I was like, "It's Eugene."
that's
And
right.
so, yeah, clearly I
That's
can.
right.
Sorry, the most important comment.
It is. It is. I guess my wife and daughter must be tuned in the bedroom as they're getting ready for bed. I got school tomorrow, but I love you too, sweetheart. Thanks for hanging out. All right, we're gonna take a break from the chat. We're gonna get back to Smash or Pass. We're gonna get our second Smash play out of the way. So, our first set of Smash plays, Nate had Kareem Hunt, Kyle had Zach Charbonnet, I had Bam Knight. We got the running backs out of the way. Now let's talk some receivers. Nate, who is your second Smash play for the week?
This is my favorite one, just because he's going to be available in shallower leagues. There's probably going to be some hesitation to pick the specific person up. You look at the Colts and you think, man, the defense from Indy has to be a dangerous defense that I necessarily don't want to go up against, especially if I'm looking at the wide receiver not named DK Metcalf in Pittsburgh, and it's Calvin Austin III. And I'll tell you why Calvin Austin III for me this week is a smash play, especially considering, well, number one is a smash play because he's the ECR's wide receiver 58. Not hard to beat that, but I'm going to give you a couple reasons why I think he is not only probably a wide receiver 4, maybe wide receiver 3 that you can put into your flex. And that's because let's look at the Indianapolis defense, pass defense as a whole. They've allowed the second most yards. They have a 7.5 yards per target. Here's the key, though. With that number, you think that's not a real high yards per target, but it's the 5th highest slot target percentage attacked on that defense. What area does Calvin Austin has he at least last week and going forward? Once he's returned, he played 29 snaps out of the slot last week. 50% of his routes have come out of there. The Colts, again, 4th most touchdowns allowed. The 9th most missed tackles, the 2nd highest first read target rate, and the 5th highest slot target percentage all kind of build around Calvin Austin gaining some momentum from last week. While I do think this, honestly, this is probably a DK Metcalf super smash play because all of those areas that I just touched on that Indianapolis does poorly, missed tackles, yak, they're incredibly poor in terms of reducing yak yards after catch for those. And then the first read targets, DK should exploit each one of those because Calvin Austin isn't the guy that's going to break a ton of tackles and get open and get yards after catch or after contact. I looked at those and I was really hoping to build some of his case off those metrics,
Right,
but
yeah.
I couldn't. So I have to take what I'm given, which is I see an 8-9 target game, 5-6 catch, probably 50-60 yards is what my projection for him this week would be, which is firmly in place of that low end wide receiver 3. The touchdown would obviously catapult him into a much higher number, but I'm not going to go as far as projecting that. It's just based off of last week's 6 target game and his first game back after a month almost. And if you look at the first couple weeks, he had 6 targets. He's had 5 targets. He hasn't really taken that next step, but he's capable of doing so. And I think Indianapolis might be that ideal matchup to give him that opportunity just because of that heavy slot work that I think they're going to try to shade over to DK, reduce that. And I just think they're going to have to pass. I don't think they can stop Indy's offense. And I think the Steelers are going to get behind. I don't think they're going to lean on Tyler Warren or Jalen Warren. I'm sorry. They probably won't lead on Tyler Warren either.
They're probably not going to lead on Tyler Warren either. Yeah,
I'm sure they would like to.
But yeah, I mean, look, Tyler Lockett used to catch the ball and really just fall down. So it's not like you have to have Yak or something like that to be able to be a reliable fantasy option. So I think
Exactly.
I think the Calvin Austin call, that the matchup is definitely one that you want to exploit. And so and the great thing about Calvin Austin is you only need a couple targets, and he could give you flex worthy play as far as that goes. Kyle, we're gonna keep this wide receiver train going and let you take us. You're gonna redeem yourself for you gave Jorge and his Commanders a hard time earlier. Let's try to earn some of the boss's trust back here and tell us about your second smash play for the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And this receiver is not wide receiver 58. He's much higher up. He's ECR wide receiver 30, playing against the Seattle Seahawks. I love this play now that I don't know if you've heard, but Terry McLaurin has been ruled out. He's re-aggravated that quad. Definitely unfortunate for him, but fortunately for Deebo Samuel, because he's about to see a lot more work. And hopefully the Commanders will get Jaden Daniels back. It looks like they will. I was reading on SI.com earlier today, and it looked like he was going to return to practice. Now, I didn't get a chance to actually look at the practice report from today, but it did look like the arrow was pointing up for Jaden Daniels to practice. And look, I just love the volume that Deebo Samuel receives, especially when Terry McLaurin's been out of the lineup. From weeks 4 to 8, and I know that Terry came back in week 8, but he did get hurt early in that game. So from weeks 4 to weeks 8, Deebo has led the team in target share by 10%, with a 25.7% target share with him out. His first read share went up from 23.7% to 31.8% without Terry McLaurin. This is a very nice first read share number. To give you an idea, he is in the same conversation as the elites of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Chris Olave. This guy just gets the volume when he's out. And volume is king in fantasy football, and Deebo Samuel will definitely see a lot of that in week 9. So I do love the play here for Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, the lack of Laramie Tunsil, or potentially, he didn't play today. Anytime there's an offensive line concern with Washington, it automatically upticks my Deebo Samuel interest quite a bit, because if there's a way to keep the pressure off of Jaden Daniels is to have design plays to Deebo, and there's no other receiver in the league that I would rather have the ball on, with some design plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. So I think you can see quite a bit of just an added floor as a direct result of that. So I'm right there with you on Deebo as well.
All right, we're going to hop back into the chat for a little bit before I get to my second smash play, and then we get into the pass plays. Well, we got some questions that have come in, so we're going to jump in and talk to the people a little bit. So Junior Smile, help me mock up a trade. People I would trade: Aaron Jones, Bill Krosky-Merritt, Bam Knight, Kareem Hunt, RJ Harvey, Oronde Gaston. So basically like half the people we've talked about at this point through the show. That's kind of wild. Targets: Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a good buy low candidate. Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and JMO. Let's help him mock up a trade.
Starting with Marvin Harrison, if you would need to get that done before this week. Something tells me the Dallas match, it's going to be like, if we look back to last year, I think it was it week was that for Marvin Harrison? Was that week 1 or 2 when he had
was week 2 against the Rams?
Oh yeah, that's right.
I remember it quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember that, Phil? Exactly. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So I think that's one that if you can move, if Marvin Harrison, as you said, buy low, it's that window could potentially slam shut and have some nails put into it after the end of this week for the person who has him, has been waiting for that blow up week. Who Kyle, Drew, who of the 4 do you think, number one, feasibly with the players listed? I don't know if he could get Devonta Smith or I don't know, without Flacco, T. Higgins value for me is a little bit lower, but still not bad.
I do think his biggest trade chip out of this is Oronde Gaston. But my question to him is, who's his other tight end before we start talking about moving him? So, JR Smile, if you can drop me whoever your other tight end is, let me know. because if it's not as good as Gatson, or I don't want to get rid of him, but if you have another solid one, we might be able to move Gatson for Devontae Smith or Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's got a lot of trade value right now after those 2 big weeks that he's had.
Yeah, that is a good point. If you have another really solid tight end, you could use Gaston as a trade piece. He's not somebody I'm dying to trade if you don't have another reliable option, because I do think he can be a tight end one rest of the way. But I'm going to take a quick break from the questions for just a second, just to throw our boy Chris up here. Just dropped in to say, hey, go Jays, brother. I'm rooting for you. I'm pulling for you. I hope they pull it off. And I think pretty much all of America outside of those folks that live in Los Angeles are also with you. The Toronto Blue Jays are America's teams for this series. So go Jays indeed. But yeah, I mean, look, I would definitely prefer to trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. But if these are the guys you're willing to part with outside of Gaston, you're probably going to have to settle for like a JMO trade instead. Yeah. Maybe you can flip Hunt or Bam. I think we think here on this show that Bam and Hunt are both going to have good games. So if you're not going to make a trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. before the week, if Bam and Hunt end up having good games after this week, then maybe their trade value goes up a little bit, and you can capitalize on that, especially right before. Not that you should take advantage of your fellow fantasy managers, but if they're not on top of the game and they don't realize Trey Benson is eligible to return from IR after this week, maybe you take advantage of that before that news hits the airwaves. But I think Marv is a good idea to trade for. I don't know if you're going to get it done with these guys you mentioned outside of being.
But that's another guy, Drew, that could have a big game as Marvin Harrison Jr. facing the Cowboys on Monday Night Football.
That's why you got to trade for him
before the week. Yeah.
And 100%. The funny thing about Aranda Gadsden is that you recently were on with Dempsey and Bob Harris, as was I last week. And that was one of the questions that we had talking about on the show was, if you were an Aranda Gadsden luckily waiver claimer, and you had for instance, you had a top 3 or 4 tight end already, now would you rather get the more value for the bigger name? And I think we were all in agreement that you trade if you have, I hate to say McBride, because I think that's probably one of the few. But I
actually have McBride and Gasson, though. I do have those two. So
we were I can if I have one of the elite options at tight end, I'm shopping Gadsden at that point. I'm not shopping the elite option. I'm keeping McBride, and I'm trying to capitalize on the Gadsden boom games and pairing him with like my RB2 or RB3 or my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and trying to upgrade at one of those 2 positions. If I have if I have Jake Ferguson and Gadsden, then at that point I'd be cool trading Ferguson instead of Gadsden. Or if I had Kelsey or Laporta, I would be okay trading those guys instead of Gadsden, because I think that, with the Cowboys pass catchers fully healthy, I think Ferguson's kind of back in that group of tight ends as opposed to being the top 2-3 guy we were seeing whenever CD was out. And so if I had one of those options, I'm fine trading them and trying to upgrade and trusting Gadsden rest of season. But if I've got Trey McBride or Tyler Warren or Brock Bowers, I'm probably just holding those guys and seeing what I can get for Gadsden instead.
Yeah, it's hard.
All right. So hopefully that's a little helpful. Joe just traded Devonta Smith and Bucky Irving for CD and Kenneth Walker. What are you guys thinking? So a clear upgrade at receiver, going from Smith to CD, who has come back from his injury and not missed a step. Looked just like the CD Lamb we expected. But what we would expect to be a downgrade from going from Bucky Irving to Kenneth Walker, assuming that Bucky Irving comes back healthy and resumes the role that he had. So CD and Walker or Smith and Bucky, which side do you guys lean of this trade?
That's tough, because I'm hearing reports that Bucky might be out another week. And what if this injury is a little bit more than what they're leading on? Like the Chris Godwin situation there in Tampa, that's gotten worse. I mean, I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just saying this is not trending in the right direction for Bucky Irvin. Yeah, but CeeDee Lamb, man, trumps everything. I love me some CeeDee Lamb. And Kenneth Walker to me is not that big of a downgrade in this, for instance. So I would take the CeeDee Lamb and Kenneth Walker side.
I would agree.
I would as well. And you get the benefit of, I think it's a benefit of not having to deal with the bye week for Kenneth Walker. One less thing to worry about. You're going to have it next week with CD, but still, I think you get the best player available in any trade. I'm always leaning that way to start. And then when it's not too big of a drop off, like you said, and Kyle, you hit the nail on the head, the re-injury risk, or at least the lack of clarity with Bucky Irving, does create pause.
All right, Master J. Hey guys, looking to trade for Henderson, Bucky, or Benson. Heard it running back. If those are your trade targets, you must be.
I know.
No, I'm kidding. I like all three of them as trade targets. What would be a fair offer for either? My team, wide receivers, Chase, Sutton, Debo, Pittman, Shakir, Mooney. It's a nice receiver room. Running backs, Pollard, Tracy, Judkins, Hampton. Okay, yeah, I could see why you would be hurting at running back. So, I mean, obviously you're not wanting to trade from your running back room here, right? Even though I have no problem attaching Pollard to the end of one of these trades to try to get it done if the guy's just like just needs to get a running back in the trade. Chase, Sutton, Pittman, I would rather have those guys than any of these running backs for sure. Like I'm not including any of them in any of these trade for any of these running backs listed. So then we're talking about Debo, Shakir, or Mooney, and then your running back room. If we can put together a trade for any of these, I think you should be able to trade Debo straight up for Henderson or Benson. And then, like I said, if you need to just tack Pollard on that to get the trade done, that's fine. Because I mean, whatever one of these running backs you trade for, outside of Henderson, if you trade for him, I don't know necessarily you can start him. If Ramondre ends up missing, maybe this is the week and it finally happens and you get ahead of it. But Henderson's definitely should be the cheapest of the three to acquire. So, if you want to go that route and just throw like Shakir's coming off a big game, if you can throw like Shakir for Henderson and get that done, I would have no problem with that. I mean, your receiver room is deep enough that you're probably not going to play Shakir very often anyway.
And the Bills are looking to add a wide receiver apparently too, and you just add more bodies to that wide receiver room. The question I would have for you guys is what the opinion of Omarion Hampton when he returns. Has Kamani Vidal earned enough of a role that Hampton's pre-injury usage and value is? Will he return to 100% of what his value was, or his efficiency, or does Kamani Vidal take more of a workload than we're thinking? Because I'm looking at down the road and adding any one of those pieces, Quinshon Judkins and Hampton, when healthy, I would be actually okay with. Absolutely. But that interim, I just don't know what to take from that Chargers backfield. And I don't know if you guys have a strong opinion or not.
Well, kind of. I caution the idea of acquiring Omarion Hampton. I'm reading reports that this thing could be worse than what they're saying. He might go past his 4 weeks on IR. I'm reading that he could maybe come back week 13, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. I'm following up on it because even Aiden texted me, and I was like, I caution it. So yeah, I'd be very careful with Omarion Hampton. Do your due diligence. From what I can read, though, it's possible that he may stay out a little bit longer. So just read up on that.
Yeah, that definitely is something you'll need to look into. I do think that this will be Hampton's backfield whenever he gets back, and once he, it might take him a game or two of ramp up just from missing time due to injury. But once he's back to his usual allotment of snaps, I do think it'll go back to being Hampton's backfield. And whenever those guys are healthy, whenever you have both Judkins and Hampton healthy, that should be a pretty solid running back room. And then Tyrone Tracy gets an obvious bump too with, I think that, he's not an RB1 or anything like that, but I do think that Tyrone Tracy will be a solid like top 20-ish, top 24 running back rest of season. So you have three decent options, but the only problem is Tracy's really the only one that you can feel good about starting right now because Judkins is on bye and injured and Hampton is injured. And so, I think that I would probably see if I could do like a Debo for Benson swap right before he comes back off of IR. See if you can do a Shakir for Henderson swap. And if you want to go for the biggest target here and go for Bucky, then I think possibly doing, I don't know, you can almost do
Probably going to cost Judkins, right? It's going to cost Judkins to get Bucky.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't do it. Yeah, if that ends up being the case, I wouldn't do it. I would focus on trying to deal from the receiver room. Because Judkins, I think, is more valuable than any of the other running backs we're talking about trading for rest of season.
Well, and that's one thing you have to do then, Drew. And I think that's where we should focus a lot of the attention, is that if he's looking to trade for one of those three backs, at what spot? What would the return be to the other team? Are they looking to acquire a wide receiver, a legitimate one?
The Irving manager needs a receiver.
Yeah. Are they looking to, because if you're just trying to fill your wide receiver 3 spot, any one of those names on there outside of maybe Darnell Mooney is probably an upgrade over most teams' 3. But if they're legitimately so weak at receiver that any one of those guys would have to be there too, then the name, a Debo might be able to command more if they're really struggling at wide receiver. It's you always have to look at the opposing team too to see how it makes sense and what their deficiency truly is.
And Master J, sell them on what I just told you about Debo Samuel with Terry McLaurin being out. You can sell Debo right now.
Yep, this is the week to do it. All right, our friend Aiden jumping in. Would you trade away DK Metcalf and Tony Pollard for Quinshon Judkins? You might already have an answer in your head for that, but just for context, his wide receivers outside of DK are CD, JSN, Jefferson, London, and Garrett Wilson. Jesus.
Yeah.
Christ. Well, yeah, do it. You're not starting DK anyway.
I don't think I think he just wanted to brag about his team.
That's a humble brag, right? We're on to you, Aiden.
Aiden's he's a sharp. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I agree.
Nobody shocks me that he has a team built like that.
He's just throwing it out there to let us know who's boss.
Yeah, I would too.
Master J did say that he, the Bucky manager, is looking for a receiver, and so I do. I mean, Bucky is obviously the best option there. So if you can do like a Debo plus Shakir after the big Shakir game, or Debo and Pollard, right? I think I would even do Debo and Tracy for Bucky.
I might do the same
with the receiver room that you have. I think you can afford to do something like that. And I think with the expanded role Tracy's looking at, I think that might be able to get it done. So with him looking for a receiver, I think that might be able to get it done. But we appreciate the question as well.
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to give my last smash play real quick. And then we will dive into some more questions. We got about 5 more questions we haven't gotten through yet. We'll dive through those before we get into our pass plays. But I'm going to keep the receiver run going. We've got Travis Hunter for me. It looks like things are trending in the right direction. Heading into the week 8 bye for the Jags, he had 8 receptions for 101 yards on 14 targets. All of those were season highs, and he had his first career receiving touchdown to add to that as well. I'm sure most of us, if you've played fantasy football long enough, you're probably familiar with the theory that rookie receivers, especially those with the draft capital and talent of someone like Travis Hunter, we usually see an uptick in production and work for those guys following their bye. They get the rookie post bye bump, and with Hunter coming off the bye, he's set up to hit the ground running. He's going up against a Raiders defense that's been the 7th best matchup for fantasy receivers on the year, and they've also given up the 2nd highest points per game to slot receivers, which is where Hunter's lined up on over 64% of his snaps this season. And over the last 2 weeks, Hunter's had a team high 85% route percentage, 22% target share, and 27% first read percentage. And I'm not saying that he's the clear wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season based on a 2-week sample. I'm just simply laying it out there that things were starting to trend that way headed into their bye. And Hunter only played 12 defensive snaps in the Jags' most recent game before the bye. And it's been very clear that they need him on offense. Their receiver room has not been able to hold on to the ball for shit. And so I think that Travis Hunter, given his production profile in college, where he got drafted, the draft capital, the talent, the production and the usage ramping up right before the bye week, and now having this beautiful matchup coming out of the bye week that they've had multiple weeks to prepare for. If a dumb fantasy football player can figure out that that Las Vegas is exploitable in the slot, I am sure the Jags and Liam Cohen are all over that. And so I would expect a great game for Travis Hunter this week. So, given the usage, the matchup, and Travis Hunter beginning his ascension, I think he's a smash play at wide receiver 26.
Yeah, we saw that.
All right. We are going to jump right back into the questions real quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just agreeing with what you were saying. I can't tell if I'm lagging or anything here on my end. It didn't seem like it is, but in case I was just saying I agree with you. It looks like once he started saying "give me the ball" and really pushing, he was starting to get fed a little bit more. I need to go back and look and see what the actual splits on the defensive snaps versus the offensive snaps, how that's trending, more the defensive snaps as a whole. And it's one thing I've kind of lacked paying attention to the last couple of weeks, because that was the one thing I wanted to watch all season, is at what point do they realize doing both at such a high level, or at least an involved level, is going to hurt the other side. So maybe I'll check into that, and I'll have that ready by Sunday morning, when you can tune into the Fantasy and Frame Sunday morning show at 7 a.m. Or 8 a.m. Central till 11.
There you go. Nice plug.
Yeah,
nice plug.
yeah, man. It's I'm glad you mentioned that, because in the pre-fantasy football draft process, I thought Travis Hunter was going to play a lot more on the defensive side of the ball. So I want to go ahead and accept that L right now here going into week 9. He has not played as much as I thought. And from what I can gather, Nate and Drew, what I can gather from the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're using Hunter on the defensive side of the ball in selective situations. Like when they play the Bengals, for instance, he plays a little bit more on the defensive side. When he plays the Rams, I think he played a little bit more on the defensive side. So if you've got that strong 1-2 punch there on the offensive side of the ball, I think he plays a little bit more. But if they don't really have that threat, I don't think Hunter plays as much defense.
Yeah, just for what it's worth, he only played, I think it was 12 defensive snaps against the Rams, and the 2 weeks prior, the 2 previous weeks before that, he was over 20 plus snaps on defense each of the previous 2 weeks. So he definitely took a step back on the defensive side right before the bye. So we'll see if that was just a matchup dependent thing, or if that's a sign of things to come. But yeah, as Chris pointed out, as an IDP asset, he is a cheat code, because you're basically just getting to play a wide receiver at corner. So
I am curious. Do you guys know, like, how much has Travis Hunter been scoring in IDP? Because I honestly don't know.
So it's definitely league specific, or league dependent. There's a lot of IDP leagues that you don't get the offensive stats for him. I have him in Scott Fishbowl, which is a unique scoring format. And first of all, shout out Drew. Your Scott Fishbowl team this year is much better, I would
finally
say.
Not
correct?
In the gutter. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I know if that's not a cheap shot. That was not. I think it came
It's a very
across that
factual
way.
statement, though. My Scott Fishbowl team the last 2 years has been
41?
My worst team that I've drafted for 2 years straight. So
Yeah.
you were not wrong in that aspect. It has been rough.
Not been so great. And a little bit of that is as a direct result, I would say, of maybe investing a little early in Travis Hunter, hoping to get something. But, on a week-to-week scoring, like last week was a 41-point week. But that's because he had, 8 for 101 and a touchdown. They don't keep track on the sleeper site of his defensive points of what he got. So I would have to go in and look and see specifically if I could find that out. But it's league to league specific. He definitely can be a cheat code if you get both, because there's no defensive backs that are putting up 25 on a per week basis, if just based off of receiving, even if it was mediocre receiving numbers plus his defensive stats. So
right. All right, let's let's speed run some questions real quick before we get into the past plays, and we'll see how cool. We're not going to keep it in an hour, which we very rarely ever do, but we'll see if we can keep it around there. All right, go Blues. Rather have BTJ and Olave or Nico and Cup? This would be BTJ and Olave for me. I don't know if you guys disagree.
No, I love Cooper Kupp, Drew, but
yeah,
that's another loss. We'll get to that later.
It's BTJ and Olave for
it's
sure.
definitely BTJ and Olave, yeah.
Galaxy Pictures. I'm leaning towards starting Harvey over Bill this week. It's been hard to trust Bill's efficiency. Harvey seems to do more with less. Kyle, I know that you already looked into the Harvey usage and things like that recently. So you want to talk a little bit about how you view Harvey after his big game the past week?
Yeah, just like you said, Galaxy, his run snap percentage share is only 20%. He's doing great on that, but he's still only getting 20% of the run snap share, where J.K. Dobbins is still seeing 54%. So nothing, in my opinion, has changed to the Sean Payton offense. It is still J.K. Dobbins. Yes, Harvey had that tremendous game of 3 touchdowns, and in my opinion, I think he's a great sell right now on RJ Harvey if you can sell him.
Yeah,
because Sean Payton's still going to continue to run J.K. Dobbins. I mean, it didn't even get talked about, but J.K. Dobbins had 111 yards last week.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid game. Yeah, I don't think Dobbins is necessarily going away. I do think that Harvey's snaps will increase as the season goes on. But we're just talking about for week 9 here, and I understand wanting to start Harvey over Bill, given how disappointing Bill has been and the big game that Harvey's coming off of. But with Bill, you at least know he's going to be on the field. With Harvey, that's a big question mark. So it's definitely a big risk playing Harvey over Bill, but I understand where you're coming from with wanting to do that and get if that's the choice that you would make. But I would lean with JCN until we see Harvey snaps increase on a consistent level. But I get it though. Coming off the big week.
It's just a volume play, right, Drew? I mean, you're going with JCN's going to be in there more than Harvey, so you got to go with that because you can't count on Harvey doing that again.
Right. All right. Kelly of the month played Otten over Hunter Henry last week and worked out. Very nice. Otten on bye. Henry worst matchup versus Atlanta. Yeah, tough matchup there. Who I dropped to stream Loveland? TD dependent Henry or Otten on bye, but targets with no Evans. So, yeah, I mean, we know Evans isn't coming back. We don't know when Godwin is coming back. So there's a chance coming out of the bye, Otten is still going to have a decent workload, but with Henry, we know that Henry's been, it's hit or miss, but he's been involved as well. So I don't know, Nate, do you have between Henry or Otten, do you have one that you would drop for Loveland?
It's not for me. I don't have him in my rankings that separated that I would, and I have 3 spots for Henry. And I hate the Atlanta matchup. I would probably, oh my God, I hate whenever I'm stammering on trying to come up with an answer because I don't want to just off the cuff and just say what.
Yeah,
I'm probably going Otten and for Loveland. Right.
Yeah, and he's basically saying for sure he's dropping one of these guys to pick up Loveland. He just doesn't know if he should drop Otten or Henry. But I do think dropping one of these guys to pick up Loveland is the right move. And the reality is, I think Loveland's the right option to pick up anyway, just because there's a world where Loveland in the second half of the year ends up being your go-to tight end. He could very well end up being the tight end that you play the rest of the season if he gets a bump in usage down the stretch. And so I would probably drop Henry just because I think that there's a better chance of Otten getting picked up versus Henry just based off the game that he's coming off of. And so if something doesn't work out, if Loveland is a bust and you want to pick one of these guys up, I think you're going to have less of a fight on your hands the next waiver cycle trying to pick Hunter Henry back up than you will be trying to pick Cade Otten back up, if that makes sense. So that's probably the route that I would go. But honestly, I think these guys I think Otten and Hunter Henry are very, very close rest of season anyway, so I don't think it really matters which one you drop. But picking up Loveland, I do think is the right play. All right. Just to basically trim this one down for Osiris, essentially Lamar or Hurts rest of season.
Lamar.
I agree. Colony.
I was actually thinking Hurts.
Really? Okay.
Well,
You just
yeah,
worried about Lamar maybe not being completely recovered from his injury?
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
What if I told you that the Ravens quarterback has the third easiest remaining schedule for weeks 9 to 17?
You could sell me on that, but then that is kind of nice, Drew. But
the Eagles also have the 8th easiest, so they both have pretty good schedules rest of the way.
But what are the Ravens' record right now? Here's what I'm getting worried about.
Okay, you think they might fall out of contention and Lamar might not end up playing?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that's the sky's falling kind of fear, right? It's Chicken Little.
I think they go on a run to get back into playoff contention. Because they've got Miami, which should be a win. Minnesota will be a tough game, but it's winnable. Cleveland, the Jets, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Bengals again. They really don't have tough games until week 16 and 17 against the Patriots and the Packers. And they're tough games for real life NFL, but they're actually plus matchups for fantasy quarterbacks. And so I think that I think the Ravens are going to be back in. We're trying to fight for playoff mode, and then Lamar is going to be in situations with great matchups where his team is leaning on him and depending on him to carry them into the playoffs. And we all know what Lamar can do whenever it's time to put his team on his back. So I would lean Lamar, but Hurts is the one we've actually seen on the field. But that
sold me, Drew. You sold me. I like it. Good call.
Okay. Cool. Good. Bob Hope, trade Keenan for Ferguson. Good. So why say more words with less words do trick?
I guess if you have an abundance of wide receivers and you don't have a tight end that you like, I am a little more down on Ferguson as far as him matching what he's done. Exactly the points you brought up earlier is now when you have CD and you have George Pickens' relationship with Dak. Yeah, he's number 3 on that list. Keenan Allen, but it's very similar regards. With everybody in the mix, there's going to be weeks where Keenan Allen has production as the 3rd best option in the passing game. There's going to be weeks where he's number 1. And at the end of the day, it does come down to team makeup. And if you're heavy at wide receiver, I could make a case for selling Keenan. I'm going to say high. I think that his value will never get, better than where it's been so far through 8 weeks.
Yeah, and it's really weird, but Keenan Allen only played 25% of snaps this past week. I don't know if that was just a matchup thing or what, or if it's because everybody's healthy and Gadsden has emerged, and so McConkey's playing well. They've got him in the slot. They've got Gadsden operating in the same part of the field. Maybe there's just not a need for Keenan Allen right now with everybody healthy. I don't know, but if Keenan Allen if he's going to see I don't think that 25% of the snaps is going to be the norm, but if he is going to see a dip in snaps, then I think being able to get Ferguson, who I agree, I think that Ferguson does take a hit with everybody healthy, but he's still a mid to back end tight end 1, and so Keenan Allen on 25-30% of snaps, he might be like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 if that trend continues. And so you could have gotten out at just the right time as well. I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out. If there's one thing we know, it's that the Chargers are almost it's just almost impossible for them to stay healthy. So I'm sure Keenan is going to work himself into more snaps one way or another. I don't care who you have to trade with to get it done. You don't need DK. Trade, make the trade.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I would still DK bought out for Junkins. Yeah, I would still do it. All right, Steven just made a trade. I traded Chase Brown for Tyler Warren. I have Junkins and Gibbs to start. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a Chase Brown truther, but at the same time, even I realize that's a significant upgrade at a more difficult position when you already have Judkins and Gibbs.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's a no-brainer. You did a great job there. Did an absolutely great job. Yeah. All right. let's get into these pass plays. So we talked about our smash plays. Now for our week 9 pass plays, we're looking at players that are in the week 9 Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings, guys that are ranked inside the top 15 quarterbacks, ranked inside the top 20 running backs, inside the top 35 receivers, or inside the top 12 tight ends that we think could be set up to disappoint. This could be like a full on, hey, you need to bench these guys this week, or this could be just like a, hey, you might need to temper expectations this week. We know you can't bench him, but you might need to expect that you're going to be let down with him, and you might need to make up the difference elsewhere. So whenever we're looking at the pass plays for week 9, Nate, why don't you kick us off and tell us who your first pass play this week is?
Yeah, I would say he falls in the category of you probably could bench. It's Romeo Doubs, and he's the ECR wide receiver 33. He's always week to week. He's in that group of a lot of flex questions where people have to make that decision. And typically we've advised starting Romeo Doubs Sunday mornings on this show. This matchup's a little different. The Carolina Panthers, extremely stingy against wide receivers. I mean, the 9th fewest yards allowed passing, the wide receiver room. I'll keep it short and sweet. I think that when you have this many with the reintroduction of Christian Watson, the cannibalization of the targets, and not knowing exactly how it's going to unfold, on top of that, a 12-point favorite means it sure seems like it's going to be a Josh Jacobs game once they get ahead. I don't want to rest on trying to predict a touchdown for Romeo Doubs. While he's been, obviously, if you're going to have to focus on one person outside of maybe Tucker Kraft to score, Romeo Doubs sure seems like a solid bet if you're wanting to bet on it, but maybe hedge. I'm not trying to tell you to go out and make bets, but if you want to sit Romeo Doubs and then go put a couple bucks on anytime touchdown, you'll feel better if he scores a touchdown on, 5 targets and 3 catches for 45 yards or 38 yards or whatever it'll be. But short and sweet, all the things I laid out just has me a little hesitant in if I have better options.
Yeah, I almost went with him as a pass this week, but I called him a smash last week, and I just want to be the one to talk about Romeo Doubs 2 weeks in a row. But I saw the same thing you did. The Carolina, it's a common misconception. You see a team that is a bad NFL team coming up for your fantasy option. You might think, oh, the Carolina Panthers, awesome. That has to be a great matchup because the Panthers stink. But they are very, very difficult matchup for fantasy receivers. J.C. Horn and the boys over there in Carolina do not make things easy. So yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be a tough one this week. Kyle, I was surprised to say the least with this one coming up. Both your pass plays, really, you're taking quite the redemption arc here. One of them was a guy you were really high on coming into the year, but this week might not be such a good week to play him. So tell us a little bit about your first smash play or first pass play for this week.
Yeah, it's Dalton Kincaid at ECR tight end 11. Drew, you're right. I mean, I still love Dalton Kincaid. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's just this feels like a risky start as they welcome with open arms the Kansas City Chiefs. Man, I just love this rivalry, don't you? And like Drew said, this is not an easy pass for me. As y'all know, I've been very high on Kincaid this entire year. I'm still behind him. Just leave him tucked safely on your bench for this week. He's still dealing with that oblique injury. He suffered it back in week 5. He came back last week, but he only played in 22% of the snaps against Carolina. There's reason to believe that maybe he'll be on another snap count this week. These oblique injuries, they kind of tend to linger a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you know what? The Bills have depth at the tight end position. Dawson Knox at one point was the former starter for the Buffalo Bills before Kincaid actually took the job. And this Chiefs defense is just so suffocating to the tight end position. Third fewest fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. Nate can tell you all about that, I'm sure. They have held Zach Ertz to tight end 23 for the week, Mark Andrews to tight end 20, and yes, that was with Lamar Jackson as well, and Brenton Strange. He only had 1 catch for 22 yards against this defense. Sam Laporta had the best game, against the Chiefs. He had a 5-catch night for 55 yards and a touchdown. He scored the touchdown, but if he doesn't score that touchdown, it's not that big of a night, 5 for 55. So I do think that there's reason to be cautious here with Dalton Kincaid heading into week 9.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of that because we're going to stay in the same game. Aiden, close your ears. But my first pass play for this week is Dalton Kincaid's teammate Khalil Shakir. And look, he's been steady 80 for Josh Allen recently. He's had 5 targets in every game since week 4. He had a season high 88 receiving yards last week against Carolina. Ironically, we just talked about Carolina being a tough matchup, but naturally coming off his best game of the season, I'm here to tell you that Shakir is a pass this week. And even though Shakir has been getting consistent targets, Allen is still spreading the ball around like he always does. Nobody on the team has a target share over 20%, but there's 3 different players with a target share of at least 15%. And for you to feel good about starting Shakir, you've really needed him to get in the end zone. He's been outside the top 40 receivers on 3 of the 4 weeks where he hasn't scored a touchdown. So there's only been 1 week this season that he didn't score, but you could feel good about playing him. And now this week he gets a matchup with the Chiefs defense. That's been the 3rd toughest matchup for fantasy receivers, looking at schedule adjusted points given up to the wide receiver position. And they're also giving up the 3rd lowest amount of fantasy points per game to slot receivers, which is where Shakir has lined up on over 70% of his snaps this year. So Shakir gets to deal with Trent McDuffie, who has just been an absolute nightmare for slot receivers all year. And the one thing going for Shakir, and I guess you could say this for Kincaid as well, is that the Bills could very well end up needing to put up some points if this turns into a shootout. And somebody's got to catch the ball, and Josh Allen is going to deliver the ball. And as great as the Chiefs defense is, Josh Allen is one of the few players that he can overcome that, and he can lift up the pass catchers around him. Somebody, if this turns into a shootout, somebody is going to be productive. One of me or Kyle is probably going to be wrong here, but the Chiefs defense is not going to make it easy, and they really do shut things down in that area of the field where both Shakir and Kincaid operate. And so it's going to be tough there. But so given the matchup, the fact that Shakir has already finished in wide receiver 4 territory in over half of his games this season, he's a pass for me at wide receiver 29.
Not much to argue there.
No, I think it's wonderful call.
Yeah. Nate's loving these calls that the Bills are set up for their downfall. Absolutely. All right, we'll keep this thing rolling. We've got one. We each have one more pass for the week to go, and so Nate, go ahead, hit us with your final pass play for week 9.
I'm just gonna keep it simple. Went outside even of the parameters, if you will, and I went with the QB 15 strictly because many of us will look at last week and see the stat line and think there's no way that I'm not going to start Bo Nix after the week that he had last week. Now, remember, if you're ever looking for a way to make your quarterback look good, you play against Dallas Cowboys. On the other hand, you look at their Texas counterpart in Houston, and the Houston Texans do a really, really, I'm talking mind-boggling. Like, I had no clue how bad it was or how difficult it was for opposing quarterbacks versus the Texans. We'll play a game of guess the fantasy points per game allowed to the position. Houston Texans allow blank fantasy points per game to the opposing quarterback. Kyle, guess a number.
Well, I'm assuming since you're asking me this question, it's got to be really low. So I'll go with 13.
And if I were to say lower than 13, I would say, Drew, lower than 13. Your guess?
It's a complete guess. I definitely don't know that it's 11.5.
It is. I'm going to actually go about 10.9 to 11.5, depending upon certain parameters where I think they have penalized players for like taking sacks, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah. The consideration may be, but yes, it is a league low 10 to 11 fantasy points per game. Does that not mean that Bo Nix is not capable of, I mean, he's clearly still a QB 15. If we really thought he was going to score 10 points, he'd be the QB 31. We know that, but don't go off of last week's incredible. I mean, the Pat Bryant catch that he had was phenomenal. Dallas is Dallas for the secondary. And I think this will be a lot more challenging in Houston. I do expect a lot more on the ground for the running backs incorporated. So that is mine. Bo Nix, I am out on you. Kyle, with your smash play or pass play, tell you what, we may rile some people up with all 3 of ours. How can you piss somebody off, Kyle?
Well, I'm good at doing it with this guy. Let me tell you, just look at the TikTok. Jorge told me I'd piss some people off because this is the third time that I faded quarterback Jackson Dart at ECR quarterback 11. And to be fair, he has beaten me twice. I am 1-2.
Yeah.
I am 1-2 in the Jackson Dart fade. I'm going for the 500. I'm going to end this at 2-2. I lied. I said I would never fade Jackson Dart again. But you know what? I'm doing it. And I swear, I don't hate this guy. I really don't. I actually love him in college. I mean, I have text messages saved where I've won passing yard bets on Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. Like, I love the kid. But here we are. You know, he lost Malik Neighbors, and okay, he balled. He's still quarterback 6 from week 4 when he's taken over. Now he's lost Cam Scatterboot, and he's still being ranked as a back-end QB1. This dude is literally just doing it with his legs. That's it. He can't throw for shit. Is this sustainable? I mean, with his passing options, my God, I don't think it is. I mean, at least Tim Tebow had Demaryius Thomas. May he rest in peace. But since week 4, he's quarterback 23 in passing yards. I mean, he's under 200 yards a freaking game. And I know the Niners, they're a little bit banged up on the defensive side, sure. Mm-hmm. But I do think that they can force Dart to beat them with his arm and not his feet. You know, and the Keon White edition needs to be talked about. It's an addition to the Niners that's going under the radar. He's a big boy, 6'5", 285 pounds. I don't know why he couldn't get more playing time in Mike Vrabel's system, because last year the dude had 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. But to me, it's a great ad for San Francisco. I think he's going to fit right into Robert Saleh's system.
Yeah, Keon White was every week I waited for his total snap share just to increase, because his win rate as a defensive end was exceptional. His QB hit rate, his sack to blitz ratio, all the things were actually really good for Keon White. And I'm happy that you've elected to take week 9 as your redemption ride for Jackson Dart, because this is an important one. This is kind of like, you know, you're looking at your matchups and you're thinking, or your record now, albeit 1-2, you look at, say, the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City rivalry matchup, if you will. You've chosen to take the L's like the Chiefs did in the regular season. Weeks that didn't matter, but week 9, the pivotal week that you need to get a W, you're going to do it. A la the Chiefs 4-0 against the Bills in the postseason. The games that you have to win. Buffalo very happily can win the regular, games that, honestly, do they really have meaning? Not really. But when it's postseason time, Aiden, this is all towards you and Buffalo Mafia, win in the playoffs when it really truly matters, and then come see me. So, Kyle, this is when it matters. Week 9. It's not enough. It's never.
Nate? I'm glad you mentioned that. You know what? I've got a little Crown Royal in me. I'm going to go ahead and put a bet out there.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. If Jackson Dart finishes quarterback 10 or better, I will open this show up next week with a bag over my head that says Jackson Dart rules.
Fair enough.
Well, Doyle rules. I love it. Yeah. This might not make you feel any better, but over the last 4 games, the 49ers have been the 7th best matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. But they did not have the additions that they made to their defense that they've made over the last week, over that month stretch, and they also had to play Stafford and Baker and then most recently CJ Stroud, which hadn't looked great this year, but he had a solid game last week. So we'll see how that plays out. It's very rare that I root against you guys and I want your picks to be wrong, but
you want the bag over my head in the beginning of the show.
Seeing a bag over your head to start the show with Jackson Dart's name on it and marker would be quite hilarious. So I'm kind of rooting for that now. All right, so for me, I don't have a quarterback to keep the quarterback train going. I missed the mark on that one. I didn't get the memo, but I am going to talk about a running back that folks have been playing quite a bit of over the last few weeks that I think you might want to try to stay away from if you can this week, and it's Rico Dowdle, the Panthers running back that has filled in very nicely for Chuba Hubbard, but since Chuba Hubbard came back from his injury 2 weeks ago, things have gotten a little muddy. And you would think that Dowdle would have been the guy with how well he played. But since Hubbard came back, Dowdle's been under 50% of the snaps for 2 straight games and has 1 less carry than Hubbard, but yet still has over double the rushing yards on 1 less carry. He's Dowdle's averaging over 5 yards per carry over the last 2 weeks compared to the 2.5 yards per carry for Hubbard, who he is probably still recovering from his injury to some extent. But the coaching staff feels good enough about his injury recovery to put him out there for more snaps than Dowdle. So you have to think he's at least somewhat healthy. But regardless, is being outperformed by Rico Dowdle. And Dave Canales, he recognized this week that he said he believes that they have 2 good backs, so they're going to have to figure that part out. But the problem is, even if they do flip things and Dowdle ends up being the one playing like 55% of snaps and Chuba's playing the less snap, Dowdle still has his hands full this week. The Panthers have a matchup with the Packers, who've been the 3rd toughest matchup for fantasy running backs on the season. They're only giving up 70 rushing yards per game, which is the 4th lowest in the NFL, and they're giving up just 0.29 rushing touchdowns per game, which is the 3rd lowest number in the league. And so now you're telling me that there's going to be 2 running backs with a somewhat equal snap and touch share that are going to be splitting touches against a defense that's that tough against the run, and we don't even really know how the splits are going to pan out. The way that Dave Canales was talking, it sounds like they might be going more toward Rico. He kind of talked in the past tense a little bit about Chuba whenever he spoke about him. Chuba had done great things for this team. We wanted to give him a chance coming back off an injury. Sounds like Canales, if we can see that Rico Dowdle is playing well, then Chuba Hubbard, I'm sure Dave Canales is smart enough to figure that out as well. So I do think there's a chance that Rico ends up overtaking the snap share again this week, and he ends up being the guy that plays the most snaps and gets the most touches. But I think Hubbard is still going to be involved enough for it to be annoying for fantasy managers. And then on top of that, the matchup is just absolutely brutal. So at running back 19 in the ECR is too high for me. I think that's much lower. He should be much lower this week. And if you're in a tough spot, you can play him, but I would just temper your expectations. I think he's more of a flex than an RB2 this week.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I remember when they were talking about who was going to start after he'd come back from the injury, and he was very vague about it. But because he was vague, we knew it was Rico Dowdle. We just knew that he was going to be the guy. He didn't have to say. Basically, him leaving it vague kind of told us it was Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, I agree with that. Epic Fail, what's up, man? Appreciate you being in the chat. Got one more question for us. Should I trade Diggs for Marv? 10-man full PPR. Got this offer today.
Yeah, I think so. You guys big on Diggs?
Not big enough to not trade for Marv.
Yeah. No, it's not. Yeah.
I do like Diggs, but no, I think that I think Marv is the better option, and I think Nate's already said it. I completely agree. Dallas has just been an absolute just feeding frenzy for fantasy receivers on the year, and I don't think it'll be any different for Marv this week. I think he's in for a big week. So if you're going to make the trade, I would make it before this weekend's games.
Yeah, 100%. And Marv, no more buys. Stephon Diggs has a bye in week 14, which could be a huge week for you. Hopefully it's not, but not that I try to look at those future games, but yeah.
No, but Nate, I actually mentioned it in one of my Plays and Fades intros that is a hidden perk. If you can trade a guy who hasn't had their bye week and you're getting a guy, even if it's equal value, but they've had their bye week, of course, that's big. That's a big perk.
It really is. It's and Aiden, I've seen you in the chat. I know it. Yeah. You've been this in the last 4 consecutive regular seasons. Guess what? The Chicago Bears have the best all-time preseason record. Don't care. Doesn't matter. All these stats and little things, yeah. And we can't talk about the playoffs. I get it. It's fine. But I look forward to a great game because despite what the fan base in Buffalo feels about Kansas City, I can't say the same thing. I respect the Bills. In fact, actually, our house is kind of divided because Haley, our daughter, is a Bills fan this year. She switches teams every year, but it's okay. And we watched the Bills here, and I and the rest of the team, people here in the household, respect the hell out of Buffalo and company. So I'm hoping for a great game. Everybody stays healthy, and it's just a precursor to the playoff AFC championship that everybody in America doesn't want to see anymore, but deep down they do. And everybody wants to watch that game.
You know, I've noticed that a lot of you Chiefs fans, Nate, are very honorable, respectful. I told Nate this story before already, but I was at the AFC Championship game when Tennessee was in Kansas City. I was actually at that game. Yeah, sitting behind the end zone. I mean, Tyreek Hill ran right by me after a touchdown. But everybody was very, very nice to my wife and I, except for a couple of sour apples. But there's always sour apples in every fan group.
Every fan base has them.
Exactly. But for the most part, they were all like Nate. They were congratulating me for even getting there, because we were. They were very hospitable, man.
We're so happy for you, man. We know you're so used to usually.
We love getting the Titans in this matchup.
I know. We're so glad that we ended up getting to play the Titans. This is fantastic. We love that you're here.
Maybe so.
All right. Normally we would react to the previous week right about now, but most of the stuff we had lined up to react to, you guys have already brought up in questions in the chat and things like that throughout the show. And so you made that part a little bit easier. So we're going to show some love to a partner of ours. We're going to talk about Fast Draft. So before we leave out tonight, of course, we have to shout out our friends over at Fast Draft. The season is heating up. We're somehow already approaching fantasy playoffs. We'll be here before you know it. We're basically over halfway there. Fast Draft has you hooked up with new games, though. If your season isn't going the way you would have hoped, just start fresh with Fast Draft. You can get in on the Flex 6 Frenzy, which is a 10-team 6-round game where you pick up running backs, receivers, or tight ends in a 6-round 20-second clock. You pick the best 6 guys you can, PPR scoring for the Sunday slate, and profit. Or you can do the quick 6 Super Slam where you're picking 6 guys for the Sunday games. No salary cap, no problem. Pick your best 6 guys and make it happen over at Fast Draft. So, fellas, before we get out of here, just to wrap things up, Week 9 Smash or Pass for Smash, Nate had Kareem Hunt and Calvin Austin. Kyle had Zach Charbonnet and Deebo Samuel. And then I had Bam Knight and Travis Hunter. And then for our pass plays, Nate had Romeo Dobbs and Bo Nix. Kyle had Dalton Kincaid and Jackson Dart. And I had Khalil Shakir and Rico Dowdle. So we're going to be back once again next week to talk about Week 10. We do this every single week for any of you guys that are new. We cover our favorite plays and our favorite plays and fades every week on the show, answer live questions, go through all that with you guys. So if you were new here tonight, we appreciate you coming and hanging out. Hopefully you'll be back. For those that did return, I know I saw several familiar names in the chat tonight. As always, we appreciate you guys coming back and hanging out with us. Nate, any parting words?
Go Chiefs.
Kyle,
check out Plays and Fades, fantasyandframes.com. That'll come out sometime tomorrow. And if you've been still listening to the show, don't forget, if Jackson Dart finishes quarterback 10 or better, I will open the show with a big bag over my head.
My final parting words is go Jackson Dart. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. As always, we'll see you next week with or without bags. That will be to be determined. You'll just have to come back and check out and see. Good luck to all you guys in your matchups this weekend. Unless you are somebody that's playing me in a matchup, then I hope for the worst for you.